Hello and welcome everyone to today's meeting of City of York Council's Area Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Andrew Hollier and I'm the chair of the committee, and I'm joined on screen by the 10 other members of the committee who are all denoted by CLLR in front of their names. We're also joined by Gareth Arnold, who's City of York Council's Development Manager. We'll also be joined variously by other planning, democratic and legal services council officers, potentially should the need arise by technical staff. Officers not currently participating in the meeting will have their videos off, but if we do at any point ask an officer to the sort of virtual table to present an item, if they could switch their videos on, and at the first time they meet, if you could just state your name and title. We've got 4 items on the agenda today, and for each we'll start with a presentation and update from officers. That will be followed by an opportunity for the public and interested parties to address the committee. And then after then, the committee will debate the proposal and come to a decision. At various points throughout, after the presentation, after each public speaker, members of the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions for clarification. And as usual, if I could request, if members do want to speak, if you could raise your blue virtual hand, and if you've got a supplementary question, if you could raise your physical hand to the screen, I'll be able to see it's more urgent. When we do get round to voting, we will, for the avoidance of any doubt, conduct a name vote, and I'll ask the democracy officer at that point to conduct the vote. Yes, and lastly, just to remind members not to leave the screen during an item. I think as well we've got one apology for the meeting today, which is Councillor Kilbane substituting for Councillor Melly. I can't see any others. Yep, so if we move on then to the agenda, agenda item 1's declaration of interests. Members can't see any, so if we could move on then to the minutes of the last meeting. I've just got one the minor point to raise, which is in the resolutions at the end. It refers to the wording for the reason for refusal, which should have been deferral. Just a typo there, if that could be amended, but other than that, Councillor Crawshaw, you got it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just on page 3, right down at the bottom. I think to make these minutes reflect properly the tenor of the conversation that was had, and in particular the comments that were made by the public speakers, I'd like to suggest that we insert a paragraph between the very last paragraph and the penultimate paragraph on that page. So it talks about Mr. France as the developer of the scheme, and I think that we should have a paragraph there where we say something along the lines of Mr. France confirmed that monies going to Barnett's would be as a result of the sale of the buildings, and that the profits from the development would be retained by the developer, because the whole of the subsequent debate hinged on the affordable housing element within the profits of the development. And I think it's important that we make it clear, because a number of the public speakers that are also referenced are talking about the need to protect Barnett's, and I think we established quite clearly that the two things were being conflated in a way that wasn't appropriate to be.
Okay. I think possibly the best thing to do there then is if, I guess if the democracy officer could draw up the exact language to kind of reflect what Councillor Crawshaw said, and perhaps if the wording of that could, I guess if the committee gives sort of delegated powers to me and Councillor Crawshaw just to agree that later, but otherwise if we're happy with the minutes then we can move on. We'll see a show of hands, I guess. Fantastic. And then agenda item 3, which is the public speakers under the general remit, which we don't have any today. If we could then move straight on then to the plans list, and we've got 4A first, which is the Telecommunications Mast in North Street, Park in North Street. Gareth, if you're able to present this.
Can members see that?
Yep, see that.
Okay, good. So we have also have with us Lindsay Jenkins, who's the planning case officer for this application, to answer any questions that members may have. I'll just go through the presentation. So this is an application for replacement telecommunications equipment at the Park Inn on North Street. The site's in the central historic core conservation area, and the upgrades are to provide 5G technology. So I think members will be aware of the building, which is center screen. You can see the existing telecoms arrays on the building in this view from Lendal Bridge. This is a view from outside the city screen building across the other side of the River Ouse. Again, you can see the telecoms arrays as they exist at present. And then from Ouse Bridge, this existing roof plan shows the position of the existing telecoms equipment there and there, and the existing elevation. That's from the North Street side of the building. This is the proposed roof plan. Telecoms arrays in these areas here. As proposed elevation from the same viewpoint as as existing I just showed. Elevation from the south. Elevation from the north. Do members wish to see any of those or have any particular questions about the images? I'll keep them on the screen for now.
Just ask if members could raise your blue hand at this point, because I can't see any physical hands. But I'm not seeing any, so I think we're okay there, Gareth. Thank you. Do members have any other general questions about this? No, I can't see any. So then if we move on to our public speakers, and we've got two. First up should be Mr. Melchizedek, and apologies if I've mangled your name a bit there, but are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We give public speakers 3 minutes to address the committee. I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds. And then just after you've finished, if you're able to just stay on the line, I'll just check whether or not the committee have any sort of questions they'd like to put to you at that point. Okay. Please feel free to start in your own time.
Okay. I'm Ocean Melchizedek, representing 5G Awareness York, which is perhaps the unidentified campaign body that's recorded in 4.1 of the assessment. I've made many representations to the Health and Wellbeing Board about the dangers of 5G, but these have fallen on deaf ears as reliance is placed on the advice of Public Health England to adopt the 20-year-old guidance from an unelected body, industry-appointed people, called IPNA. So my objection to this application for 5G aerials on the Park Inn Hotel is that an invalid IPNA certificate has been provided for this planning application, and I dispute the finding in clause 5.21 of the assessment, where it says that a statement that self-certifies that the cumulative exposure, when operational, will not exceed the IPNA guidelines on radiation. So the key words there are operational. So unless the telecoms companies supplying the 5G equipment are able to measure the radiation levels from not only the aerial that is subject to the application, but also all the repeaters, including from other telecom operators, that will be needed at street level to make the 5G system work. So you need to measure all of them, and that hasn't been done in my view, so I don't think that the certificate is valid. So finally, I draw your attention to the European Union's Parliament's concerns about 5G. So the relevant section, which I hope has been circulated by email to all of you, but I'll read it out now, that it says, this raises the question as to whether there is a negative impact on human health and environment from higher frequencies and billions of additional connections, which according to research will mean constant exposure for the whole population, including children. It then goes on to talk about other problems with 5G, and finally ends up with the EU's current provisions on exposure to wireless signals, the Council recommendation on limitation exposure of the general public to electromagnetic fields 0 to 300 gigahertz is now 20 years old and thus does not take the specific technical characteristics of 5G into account. So I think on many different reasons, I think the application should be denied. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could just hang on, I'll just check with the committee whether there are any questions for you. Councillor Kilbane.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask the Speaker what he thinks the health implications of 5G are to the human body?
Yes, there's numerous different ones, but the main ones works at the neural level, which is tiredness. There's also infertility connected. There's neurological problems, depression, suicidal, it affects your neurological, the ability to sleep, and a lot of the problems that we perceive actually in the world is perhaps coming from all this EMF radiation that we experience all the time, even from 4G. But I think 4G is manageable. 5G is a different league of risk to us.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any other questions at this point, so I'm sorry, Councillor Galvin.
Could I ask the Speaker what then is the difference in frequency range between the various levels? We've got 3G, 4G, 5G.
Yeah, well, the G just means the next generation. Now, the thing is, there's actually a benign...
It identifies the three bands that I want to have make a point on.
Yeah, what's happening is they're increasing the frequency, which if you know anything about physics, if you increase the frequency, you reduce the wavelength. But what it means is you can put more data down the signal if you increase the frequency. So the next generation, which is called 5G, is going to use a much higher frequency, which is moving into very dangerous territory, which is affecting our human bioenergetic field and causing all sorts of dangers. So the difference between 3, 4 and 5 is between 4 and 5 is the additional amount of data that they want to pump us with. But to do that, they're going to have a ton more repeaters because the wavelength is shorter. So you need for your phone to work with to get the signal, the repeater will have to be very close because the wavelength is shorter. I can't really explain all the physics of it, but suffice it to say 5G is going to be horrendous. But there is a benign form of 5G, I should point that out. It just means the next generation. It depends what the telecommunications company will bring out. There is a form which can put higher data through a lower frequency. And if we get that, then I'll be happy. But there's, of course, there's no specification saying that they should bring in the benign form. They could put in the higher frequency one at 60 gigahertz, which is very dangerous for us.
Thank you. Sorry, I just need to check, Councillor Parrott, we lost you there for 30 seconds or so. Did you catch? Did you miss anything? I guess whilst you're aware.
I did end up missing a little bit of that. So I don't know at what point it might be useful to sort of recap the question. I heard the question from Councillor Kilbane and then only the beginning of the answer to that.
Right, okay.
All right. Well, my recommendation in all this, actually, I've talked to the Health and Wellbeing Board, is for the City of Council York. It's a complicated area, I have to say. it involves understanding a little bit about physics. It's not complicated. Well, for me, it's not complicated, but I studied physics at school. But you have to understand the frequency and how it relates to wavelength. And as you increase the frequency, you reduce the wavelength. And that means you have to have a huge number of repeaters from the aerial to create the field, which will then connect to the 5G. But there is a benign form, that's what I wanted to point out. But my recommendation is that the council should form its own little working group. It could only be 1 or 2 people just to investigate this area, to inform you, because it's an area that not many people know about. And my main driving force, the work I'm doing.
Straying a bit there from Councillor Galvin's question, but I do think he had a supplementary point that he wanted to raise. No. He's indicating not now, but I do have Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask Mr. Melchizedek if he can quote a single peer-reviewed paper by experts that shows that 5G has any adverse effect either on the human body or on the biosphere, because I've spent the last week going through many research papers and I haven't found a single one yet that confirms what you're saying. The whole business about what you're saying about the increase in frequency and the more repeaters needed is purely because higher frequencies are scattered more and consequently they have a much shorter range than urban areas. I'd be very grateful for your explanation, please.
Yes, well, we've set up a website called 5G Awareness York, and I'm happy to send that to Michelle, who can then pass it on to you. And in there, that we've got a whole load of peer-reviewed papers and videos from doctors, scientists, and there's even over 200 scientists and doctors and medical practitioners who have signed a petition to the European Union to say this should not be rolled out until more research is done. Because you might say, well, there is what the IPNA people say is there's no conclusive evidence. What they're really saying is there's a lot of evidence out there, but then it's not that they deny, there are people who say that the papers that have been written aren't adequate to meet the requirements. So they've been dished by various people because there's a ton of money behind this, because the telecommunications money.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Melchizedek. Yep. I think we've got the answer to Councillor Fisher's point there. Councillor Webb, you've got a question?
Thank you. Where to begin on this? Essentially, could you give me the mechanism by which there is harm on the human body from this form of radiation?
Okay, so this gets into oxygen, and you've got to understand how oxygen works. Now, the closest knowledge I've got here is how microwaves work. Now, if you've got a microwave oven in your kitchen, you'll know that when you switch in that one, it's got internal radiation that affects the food, and it works at the resonant frequency for water. And what it does is it sort of alters the water.
Thank you. Could you just stop there then? I think yep. Yes. So you're suggesting that the water molecules vibrate. Could you now tell me what the frequency is that you're concerned about with the 5G?
It's 60 gigahertz, or something like 40 to 60 gigahertz, because that affects the oxygen molecule. It will affect what's called the Kelton-gated channels inside the body. Martin Paul is the man to find out about that. He's done a lot of research in that area. Dr. Martin Paul, P-A-L-L.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any further questions, so I'll thank you for your comments this evening, and obviously the committee will take them into account during their sort of deliberations later. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Up next then, we've got Councillor Baker, who's the local, or one of the local ward members.
Hi.
Hi. Yep, you'll know the drill.
Could I just add to the response to Councillor Kilbane's question quickly before I start my 3 minutes, that EMF radiation is also considered carcinogenic?
Yeah, okay. I think you've added there, but if you could make a start on your speech, and if people want to ask, they can do after.
Oh, fine. All right then. Thank you. So concerns about excessive exposure to EMF are widespread, of course, and span decades, and they do need wider public awareness, which is why I have called it in today. The EU Parliament, informed by the European Committee on Radiation Risk, is warning us of the inescapability of constant exposure to citizens in a 5G environment. They are now calling for truly protective limits and have highlighted the lack of consent that we're being faced with. So I'm asking you today, as public reps of York, to consider your willingness to consent to this issue, the fact that no person or animal or insect or plant on the earth would be able to avoid exposure 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to these greater levels than we've seen before. So in this country, both William Ragg MP and Molly Scott Cato MEP have said that the government needs to commission research into this urgently. Glastonbury Town Council have called for a 5G inquiry. Our own MP has written to the Minister for Digital Infrastructure sharing our concerns, including a reference to the links to carcinogenic effects of this technology. And even 50,000 people have signed a petition asking the Prime Minister here and the councils in the UK to review the rollout of 5G. One of the things I've called in today is the effect on ecology, which is a valid planning concern. And the council's report you have says that, of course, the tolerance levels of the radiation have not been determined. Another EU committee says that there's a lack of clear evidence. And, you know, these leave the possibility of the unintended biological consequences being very real. And I would ask the council officers, what evidence have they reviewed about the ecological impacts? Have they asked an expert ecologist to input to this report? And if not, then I feel it is an inadequate assessment of the ecological impacts and that the application should be turned down. Did you also know that insurance companies are unwilling to insure on claims relating to EM radiation? Lloyd's, one of the foremost insurance groups, have a risk assessment report which went so far as to compare electromagnetic frequency with asbestos and saying that they would not, under any circumstance, insure claims connected with EMF technologies. Moving on to the council's assessment of public benefits, I would ask you, councillors, to draw your own conclusion as to whether 5G is in fact essential for supporting strong, vibrant, healthy communities and for enhancing social and cultural well-being. I'd ask you to balance that with the needs to accept the mental and social detriment that can be caused by ever-encroaching technology in our lives. My conclusion is that the unquantifiable risks and the overdevelopment of this technology in an urban location is simply not needed in the same ways that it might be in rural areas that need to connect people digitally. It's not something we need here in York. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, that was my timer. I don't think it's ever reached 0 before. Councillor Webb, you've got a question there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Baker. I want to focus on the carcinogenic point, as the carcinogenic point, as in you're suggesting that this radiation can cause cancer, directly contradicts what the previous speaker said about the fact that it vibrates oxygen molecules, essentially. So again, I suppose it's a similar question. Could you just explain how it causes cancer? Because it's you know, from the frequencies that have been stated, that shouldn't be possible.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Webb. No, I can't. I am not a scientist. I am representing significant public concern, global public concern, from many committees and the EU and many senior figures around the world on this. So I'm sorry, I can't, but I do not doubt it.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Chairman, I've heard all these arguments before when I think either the last or the previous generation went into being, with all the arguments on very, very much the same basis. And in fact, I think there was a report produced at that time. I think it was called the Stewart Report, which said that quite clearly at that time there was no evidence that mobile phone masts caused any problems whatsoever. One of the things that I can't get my head round is Councillor Baker and others saying that wherever we are, we're going to all be influenced? That's thee and me, you at Huntington, or sorry, at Wigginton, and me down at Bishopthorpe. Are we all going to be affected to the same extent, according to what Councillor Baker's saying? Because, as I say, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I've heard all this before when we've been looking at Masts. As far as I'm concerned, I think I'm still on 4G, and it won't have any effect. But anyway, I digress, and I apologise. Can I ask, what's the radius of alleged damage from 5G technology?
Councillor Baker, if you're still there.
I think her mobile phone signal may have gone.
I think we may have lost Councillor Baker there, but
so be it, Chair.
I don't think.
Hello?
Oh,
Yes, right. Councillor Galvin, what I do know is that the widespread rollout of 5G, which I'm trying to halt at this point, it's not widespread yet, but the eventual widespreadness of it would require masts every 100 metres. And as the previous speaker explained, the increased power and voltage from those every 100 metres is a huge increased risk compared to technology in the what we're used to.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. I'd just like to ask you how you'd respond to comments made by Professor Rodney Croft, who's an advisor to the RCN IRP, who said, and I quote, "The exposure that 5G will produce has been considered great depth by the ICN IRP, with the restrictions set well below the lowest level of 5G related radio frequency that has been shown to cause harm. And the WHO says the electromagnetic frequency exposures below the limits recommended in the ICN IRP guidelines do not appear to have any known consequence on health." Now, obviously, we've got two extremely prestigious organisations there telling us there is no harm. How come other people know better?
Right, I'm muted. Hi. The previous speaker commented about something he wanted to bring up as a concern with the way that the cumulative frequency hadn't been measured. I can only say that, like I've repeated before, I wanted to bring this into a public forum because of widespread public concern about the fact that there are so many unknowns and so much more research is actually needed before we can make conclusions about the safety of this technology.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane, is this on a similar theme, or can we move on?
It's about 5G, Councillor Hollier. Is that okay?
Is it a similar sort of?
Sorry, Councillor Hollier, what are you saying?
Would you like to ask a question? But if we can try and keep it.
I think it would have been a lot quicker without that intervention. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Baker. In terms of the opposition to 5G, a lot of it's also linked to coronavirus and coronavirus vaccines. Do you think there's any link between them?
Thanks, Councillor Kilbane. I'm not here to talk about coronavirus at all, so no, I have no comments on that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Baker. I can't see any further questions at that point. So just thank you for your comments. Obviously, they'll be taken into account throughout the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions at this point for the council officers? I can see Councillor Crackhill.
Yeah, I'd like to ask officers if they could explain to us what are the public benefits of 5G as compared to 4G.
Chair, excuse me. In paragraph 5.7, there's a reference to section 10 of the MPPF supporting high quality communications. The paragraph 112 of the MPPF goes a bit further than what we've actually reported. And I'll read that out if that's okay. So this is from the MPPF, so government planning policy. And it says advanced high quality and reliable communications infrastructure is essential for economic growth and social well-being. Planning policies and decisions should support the expansion of electronic communication networks, including next generation mobile technology, such as 5G. And it goes on into other things. So we are in our recommendation here, really following through on government policy in terms of
Sorry, Gareth, it
5G
doesn't say
rollout.
in the paper such as 5G, does it? Or I may have missed
No,
that.
sorry, that's what I said.
That's what you said. So you don't.
No,
that's not really answering my question as to what the benefits of 5G are as compared to 4G. Those comments are very generalised comments about electronic communications networks and technology. They are not comments about the benefits of 5G. We don't have anything in this paper that actually tells us what are the benefits of 5G, and we're being told that the planning balance is the determination of this paper is to be made on the planning balance between the identified harm to the heritage assets and the benefits of 5G. And yet there is nothing in this paper that tells us what the benefits of 5G actually are.
Yeah, I think what I was reading you there was an extract from National Planning Policy, which tells us that planning policies and decisions should support the expansion of such technologies, including 5G. So it's a national planning policy to for local planning authorities to support this expansion. We haven't gone into details of how quickly you can download a film in one particular 4G, 5G as opposed to 4G. I don't think that's necessary for a decision-making process.
That's the example I found. Have I already? Yeah, downloading a film a bit more quickly. Yeah.
It's what I see on the advert.
Huge benefit to humankind, obviously, having to
Chairman,
wait a few less seconds to
Point of
download
order.
a film.
What has this got to do with the planning application?
Absolutely.
Everything.
It's at the end of the day, Chair. Gareth is a planner. He's not a technical man on mobile phones or anything else of that ilk. And I think we have to judge this on the information that we've got in front of us. I think this constant harping on to Gareth about what the benefits are is out of order.
I'm sorry, Chair, but can I repeat that the paper says that this paper should be determined on an assessment of the planning balance between the identified harm that is still there to the heritage assets and the benefits of 5G. We cannot judge that if we do not understand what the benefits of 5G are.
To be fair,
it's absolutely about the planning issue.
That's a conservation issue and a looking issue. Let's move on.
Yeah. Thank you. We're trying to move on. If we could try and keep it a little bit more lighter as well. It's going to be a long night if this is the general tone of the meeting. Yes. No, I think Councillor Cradkill, you've reached the end of the point you're trying to make anywhere there. I think with Gareth. So, Councillor Webb, do you want to continue?
No, Councillor, I was just going to raise the point that I thought that Councillor Cradkill's point was pretty pointless.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I can't see any further questions at that point, so happy to move into debate if anybody would like to make a proposal. Anybody's got any comments? Councillor Galvin?
Chairman, I'm going to move the officer's recommendations. As I said, I've been here before. I've heard all these arguments before, and not one of them has been substantiated. And as for the issue of planning balance, as I read it, it's not the planning balance of the benefits of 5G, it's the planning balance of the masts on the top of the hotel. So I've no doubt that this has got to be right. And as I say, I'm going to move the recommendation from the officers.
Thank you. Can I see a seconder? Is that seconding Councillor Fisher?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to second it. The benefits of 5G are well established. It gives much faster data transfer, which will enable research and many other areas to send communication around the world much faster and much more efficiently. It is huge economic benefits, and I have no vested interest. I don't use a mobile phone, as is probably well known, but I can see the wider implications of 5G will be hugely beneficial to mankind. So I'm happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a couple more speakers, and then I think we can probably move to the vote on this. Councillor Craghill, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think those comments are made on massive assumptions and not actually on looking at the evidence and not taking the precautionary principle in terms of our health and well-being and the health and well-being of our residents. I do have a lot of sympathy with the speakers and the points they made about the research. Obviously, a lot of research is backed by corporate interests, whereas other research isn't. The European Committee on Radiation Risk throws a great deal of doubt about the independence of the ICNRIP and whether it is a body that is suitable to take an independent stance. That committee was set up in 2018, and it is doing a lot of work looking at the health and well-being impacts of 5G radiation. There is a thing called the precautionary principle, and I think we should take it. However, in terms of this planning application, I understand that the government has done its best through the NPPF to stop us from making decisions based on taking into the account the health of our residents. But I do think there is a planning argument to turn this proposal down in this case, based on the planning balance as against the identified and acknowledged harm to the heritage assets. So on that basis, I will certainly be voting against this application.
Thank you. Councillor Webb, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I think whilst we've got, we've had the last few months where we have been in lockdown. We've got people working remotely far more than they've ever done before. We've got kids in this city who are having to do their homework on their phone. And if that internet connection isn't working, that isn't getting done. This is something that will improve communication. There's no doubt about that. And I think that the fact that we've got people who are willfully ignoring the scientific evidence, the huge weight of scientific evidence here, is slightly worrying. And in terms of the precautionary principle, again, I think you've misunderstood what that is. You look at the evidence, you look at all the evidence that is available, and there is over 150 years of research on this, and you have to go with the science. And if in the future the science changes, then obviously you make those alterations. But the weight of evidence in favour of this not actually causing any harm is huge. And I think it's really concerning that you're not willing to look at the evidence. But anyway, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher, is that a hand from earlier? Or?
I'd just point out to Councillor Craghill, I'm well aware, I believe as a scientist, as a former professional scientist, I believe in following the science. And I have spent a huge amount of time researching this. I have a background in astrophysics, which is obviously to do with the electromagnetic spectrum and its effects. And I have looked at this and I have yet to find anything that convinces me there is any harmful effect from 5G. So I'm not making this decision based on one report. I'm basing it on a huge weight of evidence from across the scientific community. 5G is not dangerous, in my opinion, and no one has produced any evidence to convince me that it is.
Thank you. I can't see any further hands, so I think we can move to the vote at this point. Gareth, if you could just give us a quick rundown.
Chair, we move that to approve the application in line with the recommendation on pages 15 and 16.
Thank you. Can I just check everybody on the committee has heard the whole debate? If you could just sort of raise your hand to confirm that. Thank you. And Chris, the Democracy Officer, if you could just conduct the vote, please.
Thanks, Chair. So we've had a motion to approve, proposed by Councillor Galvin and seconded by Councillor Fisher. Members, please state if you are for, against or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Craghill.
Against.
Councillor Crawshaw.
Tempted to say 5, but 4.
Councillor Culloch.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Galvin.
4.
Councillor Kilbane.
4.
Councillor Orrell.
4.
Councillor Perrott.
Or
Councillor Wardby.
4.
Councillor Webb.
4.
And the Chair.
4.
Motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you. So that is approved. Time. So it's 17:11 now. If we could all aim to be back at, say, 5:15. Just need a quick break to bring in the next speakers. So you could turn off your videos and join the breakout room, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Right, welcome back everybody to part 2. If we could move on then to agenda item 4B. Gareth, if you're there and able to give us a presentation.
Yeah, here, Chair. The lights keep automatically going out, and I have to get up and turn them on again. I'll share my screen with members. So can members just confirm they can see the Tranby Avenue opening page there?
Yep, we can see that.
Good, thank you. So this is a planning application for a 2-storey side extension to number 44 Tranby Avenue, which is an existing lawful house in multiple occupation. Members will, let me just put the pointer on there. It's the location of the extension in green. Photographs of the site from the side. Existing layout of the property, which is ground floor lounge, bedroom, kitchen, conservatory, and on the first floor there's 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. The proposed plans are in red there, and they're shown to provide a bedroom and bathroom at first floor and a bedroom and utility room at ground floor. Roof plan, I'll just leave it on there. Members will be aware that this is a house which is in lawful use as a C4 HMO, which means it's occupied by up to 6 unrelated individuals. So whilst the proposals show 4 rooms denoted as bedrooms, it could be occupied by up to 6 residents, in the same way that the existing house could be under the Planning Act to be occupied by up to 6 bedrooms. Residents, sorry. So unless members have got any questions about any of those particular images, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. I'll just ask, yeah, please do raise your blue hand. I can't see any on the screen at the moment. Okay, I can't see any questions at that point, Gareth.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll just then ask if there are any sort of other general questions members would like to raise at this point. No? Okay, then if we can move on then to our speaker, which is Councillor Mark Waters, who's the local, one of the local councillors. If you're with us, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Obviously, you know the drill, so in your own time.
Yeah, fine. I'll just get straight to the point. It's another application by an absentee landlord seeking to maximise profit at the expense of surrounding council tax-paying residents, and to hell with the effects on the wider area. It's very much like the appalling situation on Newland Park Drive, where the then Hull Road councillor coined the phrase super homes, properties created so big that they will never ever be part of the residential family home market. Leaving aside the increased noise, disturbance and waste issues from a 5, 6 or indeed 7 bedroom student HMO that this committee will no doubt ignore, you cannot ignore the planning inspector's decision notice which I sent you all earlier. This was in terms of a previous application to build a separate dwelling on this plot. The application that you've got in front of you seeks to circumvent that refusal and achieve the same objective of increasing revenue from a traditional 3-bedroom semi by getting 5, 6 or 7 bedrooms onto the site. The previous application was refused largely because of the prominent corner location of the property and the incongruous nature of building on the garden area and the relationship with other corner plots. This application is in essence no different. These corner plots were laid out originally to maintain sufficient space to the properties in the adjoining side streets. Number 19 Baysdale Avenue will be particularly badly affected by the extension, but it is the effect on the wider streetscape that must be at the front of your considerations, as the extension is bad enough, but the loss of a corner garden plot to meet the demands of a 5, 6 or 7 bedroom property is unacceptable, and I draw your attention to paragraph 5.13 as to the potential number of bedrooms. I note conditions relating to cycle parking. Well, I would suggest a visit is undertaken to Newland Park Drive or Badger Hill to see similar cycle parking areas empty whilst cars are strewn all over. I note also the condition for one extra, totally inadequate off-road parking space, no doubt explaining the ambiguity over bedroom numbers. But there's no condition seeking to have what potentially will remain of this prominent garden area on a corner plot planted up as a garden. Where's the council's climate change policy in this? Isn't it reasonable to condition the planting of a hedge, trees and the like, or are you all happy to see another concrete and gravel scheme designed to cut down on maintenance and maximise profit for the applicant? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If you could just hang on, just ask the committee if there are any questions for you. I can't see any at this point, so I'll thank you for your time this evening, Councillor Waters. And
right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions for the committee for officers? If not, I'm happy to move straight into debate. So obviously I'll invite any comments or proposals from any member of the committee. I can see Councillor Coolwick.
Thank you, Chair. I'm prepared to move that we adopt the officer's recommendation on this. I think that what is proposed is very different from what might previously have been considered there and failed at appeal. A further property on the site, I think, would have been a step too far, but this extension, the property already has HMO status and could be occupied amenity standards permitting by up to 6 people. I don't see any good reason for this committee to be refusing this application. So I'm prepared to propose we adopt the officer's recommendation and approve.
Thank you. Is anybody willing to second that motion? Councillor Orrell, I think I saw you first there. There's no.
Colleague has said that there's no planning reasons to refuse this. It is a different application to the one that was refused for the extra property there. It doesn't. It meets the objections that were given to that, and meets the issues that were raised in the inspector's report. So I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Chair. Just referring to a point that Councillor Waters raised about whether or not it was reasonable to condition the planting of the garden. Is that something that we could do?
It's not unlawful. You just have to consider how necessary and reasonable it is. There are. I think I'd struggle to think of an occasion where we have put a landscape and condition on an application for an extension to a house, but it's not, as I say, it's not unlawful.
Thank you. We do have a proposal and a second at that point. So, sorry, Councillor Webb, you want to come in here?
Yeah, thanks. It's only brief. Just on that same point, Gareth, if we were to suggest, a line of trees around the edge of the curtilage, for example, would that impact on like proposed parking and things for that development or anything like that?
So I'm just having a look at the layout plan. I think there's plenty of room for both. We don't have a parking plan drawing. That's something that we asked for by condition. But I don't see any reason why there wouldn't be room for landscaping alongside that.
Councillor Kilbane?
I think it's something that we should consider, because, you know, if there's anything we can do to stop our gardens being paved over and keeping some wildlife and planting going, if we can do it, I think we should definitely consider it. I'd be quite happy to put that forward as a condition for the committee's consideration.
Gareth, perhaps if we to sort of move this along a bit, I guess as part of that car parking plan, I guess could we widen that out a bit and just say to also include consideration of some elements of sort of soft landscaping or whatever the wording is?
Yes, I don't see why not. It's something to hang the landscaping condition on. The fact that we've actually asked them to increase the hard surfacing on the site for a parking space, so that could be reasonable, and that could be we could increase the so we could add that to condition 5. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, perhaps if we could delegate the wording of that sort of chair, vice chair, just on that sort of basis, sort of.
I would suggest we just take the wording from our standard landscaping condition. So I'm not if chair and vice chair wish to see that, that's fine.
A standard condition, I'm sure that's probably fine. I can't see Councillor Crawshaw disagreeing. So Councillor Corwick and Orrell, are you generally happy with that as the proposer seconder?
Yes, I think I'm happy with that. My hesitation is only that with a rental property, something that is sort of liable to become overgrown and unsightly is probably worse than something that at least looks tidy because it's low maintenance. But I've heard the comments that have been made, and I'm perfectly happy to adopt that.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher?
Thank you. Can I just clarify with the officer that condition would be binding? Because I heard the words advisory and recommendation. It would be binding, would it?
I can't remember saying the word advisory recommendation, but
Understand.
It's a that wouldn't be the first time I've said something and not realised it. Yeah, the condition would be enforceable, and it's imposed on the land. So any future landowner would be subject to any enforcement powers or that the council has.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that it was definitely a condition that would have to be conformed with. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any further points at the moment, so I think Councillor Galvin, are you?
Yeah, I've got a little green hand up. Chair, just as a point of caution, when people start talking about putting trees in hedges, we've heard today from Councillor Waters the effect on neighbours of this extension. I put it to you that trees in hedges would probably be a bigger problem to neighbours than the extension for a start. You know, I know certainly from the past experience where trees in hedges have caused conflict between neighbours. And I think to go down this route of sort of trying to enforce somebody to keep a garden maintained, quite frankly, is a bit ridiculous. I'm not going to vote against it, but I don't think that this condition, or call it what you will, I think it'd probably be a better bet if it was put in as an informative, quite frankly, which I realise doesn't have the weight that the condition has. But I have some sympathy with the condition, but I rather think that we're getting ourselves into a situation where, you know, one can argue every time somebody comes along with an extension, then we're going to start saying what they should do with the land or with the garden. And I'm a bit uncomfortable with it, Chair. I'm not going to vote against it, but I think it's something that we should be very, very careful before we agree to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think to my mind, that sort of standard condition would, I'm sure, take into account officers would do the, potential impacts on neighbours and things like that when they consider that scheme. So hopefully those issues will be addressed. I'm sure they will. Okay, Gareth, are you able to then just give us a quick sort of rundown on where we are?
You're muted, Gareth.
Too many things going on at once. It's moved to approve the officer recommendation subject to a change to condition 5 to require a landscaping scheme to be submitted.
Okay, can I just then check with all members that you've heard the full debate? If you could just sort of raise your hand or... Thank you. And yeah, we could conduct the vote, please, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. So we've had a motion to approve, proposed by Councillor Colwick and seconded by Councillor Orrell. So members, please state if you're for, against or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Craghill.
For.
Councillor Crawshaw.
For.
Councillor Cullick.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Galvin.
For.
Councillor Kilbane.
For.
Councillor Orrell.
For.
Councillor Perrott.
For.
Councillor Wardby.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
And Chair.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That is approved. So thank you very much. Just looking at the time, I think we need a little bit longer to set up the public speakers for the next item. So if I could ask members to be back at, we say 10 to 6. I think we need about 15 minutes for this break. So if people could just turn off your videos and join the breakout room, please. Right, welcome back everybody to part 3. If we move on then to agenda item 4C, which is the landline to the north of Kimberlow Lane, Heslington. And Gareth, if you could start with the presentation, please.
I'll just share my screen.
Let's come up with the
Yeah, not quite through that. So there's the title page for this application. If members can see that, hopefully. So this application is for the erection of a children's day nursery and creche on land in the new East Campus at the university. This is a reserve matters application. We're dealing with the appearance, layout, scale, and landscaping of this proposal. So the location plan, points of reference here: Grimston Bar, Park and Ride, the road, the access road into the university, and York Sport curves round the side of the hill. That's the York Sport Sports Centre, and these are the clusters of the new university campus, and this area yet to be built out. There's a 16 site plan. Members can see the contours showing the rise of the hill there. Photograph from the northeast corner. You can just pick out the lake and the university accommodation. From the northwest corner, looking east, and there's a as good as we can get composite image which shows virtually the whole of the site. So the layout plan, as explained, this is a single-storey children's day nursery. The access is from the existing roundabout junction, car parking and drop-off, and cycle parking for staff, and there's also cycle parking for visitors, people dropping off their children. It's the ground floor plan. The south and west elevations, the north and east elevations, site sections. So it's York Sport car park. That's the Northern Service Road, Kimberlow Lane. There will be a slightly steepened bank. Then the land will be flattened and excavated, and then the rise up to the woods behind. This is a cross section on the front. You'll see how the contours then return to I suppose wrap the hill side around the platform that's been created for the development. This is a render image. As we always say with render images, we're not aware that they've been independently verified for accuracy, but this shows the nursery there on the hillside. And there's an image of the entrance. This is the master plan approved in 2018 for the site. It shows the blue line there, which is the approved development area, and our site is the site we're looking at today is here. So members, this is as I explained, this is a reserve matters application. Planning permission was granted from the outline planning permission by the Secretary of State in 2007, and the conditions on the outline only allow the consideration at reserve matter stage of appearance, layout, scale, and landscaping. There was some discussion yesterday at our video site visit about the highways comments, and it's noted in the report the discussions around access and traffic related to the nursery. However, these matters pertaining to access were approved under the outline, and conditions of the outline planning permission control maximum levels of car parking across the site, traffic levels at various junctions, and other traffic matters. And there are conditions on the outline, for example, condition 6 requiring a yearly traffic survey, and condition 7 with requirements for mitigation measures should the actual traffic flows exceed predicted levels. And these matters, as I say, will be dealt with separately and are not part of the determination of this reserve matters application. Are there any of the slides that members would wish to see again, perhaps? Or I'll stop sharing the screen.
Thank you. Yeah, and if I could just ask members if you could raise your blue hand if there are any slides you'd like to focus on. I can't see any, Gareth, so I think we're free to move on. Thank you. So yeah, I would just ask if members have got any further initial questions they'd like to ask. Councillor Crawshaw.
Thanks, Chair. And I just wanted to pick up. I take the point that you're making, Gareth, about the traffic, and we did discuss it in the Chair's brief as well. Paragraph 5.44, though, talks about there being 356 trips still within the overall limit, and paragraph 5.43 suggests that this site overall is pretty much at the limit and only partly built out. So I wonder, I appreciate that it's being dealt with under the condition on the outline, but is there any mitigation already planned for the traffic? And given that we're talking about a nursery with 140 odd places, and it does say quite specifically throughout the report in several places that most of that traffic, most of the people coming to the nursery would be expected to be coming by car. So if you sort of assume that 143 kids is around about 300 trips there and back, drop off possibly a bit lower than that, but staff as well, we're very, very, very close to that limit. And I just want to be really clear from a committee perspective as to what we can or can't do, because if we're effectively approving something potentially that would trip over that limit, that would cause the outline condition to kick in, just if you could just explain how that all works, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, it's all dealt with via the outline planning permission. So the measures are in place to measure traffic levels at various junctions and control the overall level of car parking at the site. And condition 7 of the planning permission requires mitigation if there's a 5% exceedance of the predicted traffic levels at various junctions. And our colleagues in the highway section are of the opinion that those triggers are, if not, have not already been hit. They're very close to being hit, and that will trigger a conversation with the university about the mitigation measures that might be appropriate for this particular for the university as a whole, to bring those traffic levels down or to mitigate the impacts those traffic levels are having on the wider network. But in terms of this particular application, the wording of the outline is clear that whilst they are required on any application over 500 square meters to submit a traffic assessment, that doesn't actually lead to any action under the reserve matters application that you're looking at. I can't look into the mind of the planning inspector who wrote the condition, but it almost seems like a bit of a heads up in terms of keeping on top of how things are going for when we then come to look at the mitigation measures under 7 of the outline.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up there, Councillor Crawshaw? Or?
I do have another question. It's not on. It's traffic related, but not on that specific point. So,
well, do you want to go ahead now?
Thank you. Yeah. So the other question I just wanted to check, because I can see no reference anywhere to LTN 120, which is the government's new legislation around safety at junctions for cyclists in particular, I think, and obviously this is a new junction on this roundabout that would be proposed. Could you just tell us whether or not that's been considered as part of this application?
I can't, I'm afraid. I'm not aware that that's been taken into account for the particular access into the into this site. Although there is a. So just go back to the. I just need to check my drawings. There is a cycle route already along the northern side of the northern distributor road, although that's a shared path, and that's already in existence. But into the site itself, I can't see from the drawings that it's a segregated cycle path. If that's what that's the issue you're referring to.
Might be a question for the applicant, I guess, when we get to that point.
Well, I think it possibly a question for the highways officer, because I believe it is a piece of government legislation that we are supposed to not approve any new changes to junctions of any sort anywhere without reference to LTN 120. And it isn't specifically about segregated cycle lanes, but it is about cycle safety. And it applies, as far as I understand it, to any and all junctions and changes at any and all junctions.
This isn't part of the public highway. This is a private a private highway network, as far as I'm aware.
So this is not adopted highway.
I don't believe it's adopted highway.
Okay, so
I can't confirm that. I have everything to hand, but it'll take me too long to get into the relevant piece of software that will tell me that. But maybe the speakers can clarify that.
Because just for a point of clarity, and I can see Councillor Orrell's possibly got something to add as well. I'm aware of a number of planning committees over the last month or two that have either refused or deferred a number of similar applications because the LTN 120 hasn't been considered or dealt with within the application. And whether or not that's what happens with this particular application, I think this is something that the planning authority needs to be up to speed on, because it's a relatively recent change to legislation, but it is quite far-reaching and quite significant, I believe, in terms of improving cycling infrastructure and cyclist safety in particular at junctions.
Yeah, I think there is a difference there that members will appreciate between changes to the public highway and the network within a particular application site. I think whilst members may wish to see segregated cycle paths within cycle routes and footways within sites, they wouldn't necessarily be subject to the same legislative.
To be clear, it's not specifically about segregated cycleways. It's about cyclist safety at road junctions and making sure that junctions are sufficiently designed based on the number of traffic movements that are anticipated and how the sight lines are, etc. And it can include segregated cycleways.
No, I appreciate that. What I'd say is there is a cycle path here that doesn't run along the road, that runs into the just to the north of Kimberlow Hill, that can connect into the site there.
Okay, shall we go to Councillor Orrell then, and maybe you can solve this?
Yeah, I don't know whether this will help, Chair, but we had an outer ring road briefing this afternoon, and Councillor Gorm brought this up in relation to the proposals there, and the officer interpretation said that there were not exactly loopholes in it, but it was guidance rather than actual instruction, if you like, and that yeah, checking.
No, it's a piece of legislation.
It's legislation, but there was still room for manoeuvre within the legislation, which made it guidance rather than complete direction, in terms of, as you said, cycle movements and so on. So, which Councillor de Gorm was here, he would describe it much better.
Okay, thank you. We do
Chair,
have
LTN 120 is guidance. It's not legislation. I referred to it as legislation. That was incorrect.
Okay, thank you. We do have a sort of panel from the applicant shortly, one of which is a sort of expert in transport issues. So I think if we can direct questions there further shortly. But Councillor Fisher, you've got your...
Yeah, just for clarification, I've just pulled the geodata map up for the adopted highways, and none of this section, apart from a very short section of field lane, is an adopted highway at the moment, so there's no adoption.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Craghill?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to ask at this stage, just for clarification, there's seems to be slightly different wording in different parts of the paper in terms of what we are able to assess as part of this reserve matters. And on page 49, there's a list of conditions from the outline, and condition 2 says the requirement for reserve matters approval. So relevant conditions attached to this consent. Condition 2, requirement for reserve matters approval for the siting, design, external appearance of buildings and landscaping. So I just wanted to clarify that the actual siting of this development within the area, within the master plan, within the site, is something for us to consider as part of this reserve matters. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, but not because of that wording.
Right.
That would relate to the siting within the application site, the reserve matters application site. But in terms of whether you think the location in its own right is appropriate, that is absolutely within your.
Right, okay.
That's what you're here for, to make that determination.
Right.
That's quite a good spot actually on page 49. I hadn't picked that up. The condition 2, that's the old wording for the reserve matters. What constitutes reserve matters under the Act, and what I referred to in terms of layout, scale, landscaping, and appearance is the new wording from the Act.
Okay.
I don't think it makes it doesn't materially change what what members can look at and consider.
But we can look at the location.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And can I ask just another question that's kind of related to that? I'm a bit confused by paragraph 5.21 at the bottom of page 58. And then it continues, obviously, shows the site, the master plan, the 2018 master plan, shows the site as within green parkland, etc. It confirms the lower 2/3 of the site as being within the allocated area for development, which is the blue line that Gareth pointed out, I think. But but the whole of the site as green space, including tree and woodland planting. So that almost potentially sounds like a bit of a contradiction. Perhaps you could just explain that a bit more, Gareth. And then when you get to the next paragraph, 5.22, it's very clear that all allocations on the proposed master plan identify the site as open space parkland, and therefore the proposed nursery is in direct conflict with these draft policies and the master plan. So could you just sort of clarify that a bit more, please?
Yeah, well, I can't clarify 5.22 any further than it is.
So
I can go back to the if I can share my screen again and go back to that master plan. And that should be on the screen.
Yeah, that's come up.
So the red line, and these are, I can almost see one of the speakers itching to speak to you about this and the evolution of the university and how it has changed over time. And they will undoubtedly correct me if I get any of this wrong. But so there's the developable area. But within the developable area, there is also areas of open space. One of the reasons for that is one of the conditions of the outline says that only 23% of the site as a whole is allowed to have built development on it, and that's defined as buildings, car parks, and roadways. So what we are looking at today is a proposal which, whilst it's in the developable area, the master plan as it's being developed out at the moment shows it as open space, and this would be, any decision on this site, has to take that into account and decide whether it's a reasonable, sustainable development for that particular location. And there have been circumstances where the master plan has been changed. A while ago, we dealt with the retail and the doctor's surgery up here, and when it went to planning committee, members considered the arguments in its favour and granted it planning permission. The most recent cluster of new colleges down here involved a change to the master plan because it was seen to be important to concentrate the new development a bit closer to the existing university here. So there are changes. Obviously, it was a decision that was made in 2007, a master plan that was originally drawn up in 2004, and it's the university found the need to change it over time.
Right, but when it says 2/3 is developable, but all of it is parkland and open space, that's not a.
That's the case officer. The case officer has made that assessment. I'm not sure that the applicants agree with the precise figures there. I think they're of the view that the vast majority of the site is within the developable area.
Right, okay. Thank you. Sorry, I was a little distracted by my computer telling me it might shut down in a minute, but hopefully it won't. Yeah, thank you.
I think we can we take the screen down now?
Okay.
I can just see Councillor Crawshaw with a...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a very quick, I've just taken the opportunity to have a quick look at LTN 120 and Councillor Orwell and Gareth are both exactly right. My apologies, it is guidance, not a specific legislative thing. So I think it's one to keep in mind, but not necessarily one relevant for this particular application.
Thank you. I'm sure if the applicants will have been scrambling to come up with an answer anyway. Okay, I can't see any further questions at this point, so if we're happy to move to hear from our speakers, and I think on the line then we've got 5 various people from the university. I'll let them introduce themselves perhaps. If, Janet O'Neill, are you there and happy to kick off?
I am. Chair, before I start, I wonder if it would be possible for Gareth to put the master plan back up again, because that would be helpful.
Yes, I'm sure that's okay if you're able to do that, Gareth.
Yep.
Sorry, have you got a sort of prepared statement, or is it just a standard panel? Okay. That should be back up now. If
we see.
Yeah, that's there. So
okay,
yes.
We can't see that yet, but we're on delay here. Okay.
Should be there, and if you're happy to start your 3 minutes in your own time.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. The need for the replacement university nursery. The current one is on Campus West, the original campus. It's 30 years old and it's in mobiles. It has a small outdoor area on a confined site. The nursery is massively oversubscribed. It was provided for 5,000 undergraduates and there's now 17,500 undergraduates plus staff. The proposal is to treble the size and the intake. The new nursery is to provide generous outdoor space, high quality provision internally, high quality and sensitive architecture, REMM excellent and passive house accreditation, safety and security for the children. Research for the site, we looked at 10 locations aware of any issues on this site. We couldn't use the existing site because it must remain operational during the construction of the new site. Campus West is at the approved capacity to maintain its landscape character. Campus East has a 20-year outline planning permission for university uses, which would cover a nursery. On Campus East, as you can see from the master plan, the west end and the centre is built out. The eastern side is the sports village, and there's one area remaining undeveloped. In this area, south of the northeast road, this site can be developed to 6 stories, and it is within the car-free area, has already been mentioned. Just to clarify, for Campus East, the development is not controlled by the draft local plan, it's controlled by the outline planning permission, the approved design guide and the approved master plan. The approved master plan shows 65 hectares allocated for development at a density of 23%. The remainder of the site is 51 hectares of landscape, but also there's a landscape between the buildings. The vast majority of the campus, about 100 hectares, are landscape. The master plan diagram has evolved with the build out. For example, the shape of the lake didn't work when we looked at levels. Lakeside Way's been moved, the surgery and cluster 4. The site selected north of Kimberlow Lane is within the allocated area. It will be single story set within an excavated terrace. There will be generous open space and it is adjacent to the woodland to widen the children's experience. Campus East is a parkland open to the public for all to enjoy. With this proposal, the children will also be able to enjoy the open landscape and fresh air. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I wonder as well if you could introduce your colleagues who are also on the call.
Yes, so we've got John Greenwood, who is the Director of Commercial Services at the University, who's responsible for this project. So he can talk about the commissioning and the need for the application. Simon Pratt from WSP Transport Consultants, who's been involved with the transport aspects of the campus right back to when we were putting the outline application in 2004. And then Flasheen, who's from the architects.
Thank you. Yeah, and we can see a couple of initial questions as well.
Can you note down the question?
Yeah, of course. Do you still need the master plan up, or can we take that down now?
Yes, we can take it down, yes.
Thank you, Gareth. The first hand I saw then was Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully my question isn't too tough. I'll leave that for others. 5.47 in our reports is about ecology, and the submitted ecology report confirms that there's no ecological concerns, but the report includes recommendations for ecological enhancement, and this essentially could be agreed by condition and could include things like bat boxes, bird boxes, things like that. Could you just, are you happy for us to include that in condition? Would that cause you any bother? I can't see why. No.
Well, yeah.
Excellent.
In fact, I can just add to that, if I may. The university has an ecology report for the whole campus that has to be updated every 5 years, which has been done, and this is just in for approval at the council at the moment. So it's certainly something that the university is aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Craighill.
Yes, I wanted to ask you a bit more about the location that you've gone for this site, because obviously the landscape architect is particularly unhappy with this location that cuts into Kimberlow Hill. You mentioned that you looked at 10 locations around the campuses. I just wonder why you've gone. You must have known that you're going to need a new nursery somewhere on the site as time went on. I find it hard to believe you can't find somewhere in the areas that haven't been built up. I have to confess something dreadful. I haven't been up to the site for a while myself. So has the cluster 4 been built out now?
Well, they're on site, yes. So
that's been approved and.
Yes, 1,500 bed spaces there. Yes, it's well on the way.
So that site at the west end, which would be nearer the middle of the two campuses, has already been. There isn't any room to build on there.
No, but it wouldn't be any use in any case because there's no access up there for cars. The only access for cars is from Field Lane along the northern road up towards the Park and Ride and onto Hull Road. At the western end, you couldn't drive to it.
So it's very much a car-based nursery, yeah. As it keeps saying throughout the paper. So in terms of location, what about the other point that the landscape architect made about I can't remember the exact term. There's a car park area designated in the master plan just to the west of the site. You didn't consider using that site did you consider using that site for the nursery?
Yes, that was one of the 10 sites that we looked at. That site would have been further from this area of woodland that's just to the north of the application site that we're keen that the children would have access to and be able to have part of their outdoor activities. And then that car park that is shown was always intended to be excavated from the road level. So there would be, to use that area would have been more of an impact on the landscape than the proposals that we've got now.
Right, doesn't seem to be the view of our landscape architect, but
no, I can see that Esther's not happy with this, and I'm afraid it's in the planning balance. I mean, Esther has been involved. We've been 2 years doing this project, and we have genuinely looked at 10 different sites, and we're aware of the issue with this site. But what we're wanting to do is to provide enough outdoor site, enough indoor space, accessibility for people who are coming by car. And a lot of the sites that we looked at, we just had to discount. Either they were too small, or the access wasn't there, or there were other reasons why it had to be discounted. I mean, we looked at the primary school fields to see if we could do a swap with them, that they would have part of the campus, and we put the nursery on the primary school fields. I mean, we've looked at absolutely everything.
So when you said, just a bit of a detail in a way, this, but you said you want to be nearer to the woodland for the children to access the woodland, but aren't you putting a fence and don't you have a fence and a hedge between the back of the site and the woodland?
Yeah, I mean, the little kids, they won't be going unaccompanied, and they would just walk around the site.
And the informal paths, I understand they're not rights of way, but the informal paths, one of which we saw when Gareth did the filming on the site visit, the informal paths that crisscross and go along between the site and the woodland and then down the side of the site, they will be lost, won't they? That local people use for amenity, for dog walking and walking. They will be lost in the site, won't they?
Yes, but there are alternatives. 10 metres to the north, there is a footpath that goes through the woodland. And all of Kimberlow Hill is open to the public. You know, people can stray wherever they want. And this is just one small area where we'll have a hedge around the site, which we've got to do for health and safety for the children.
Okay.
Okay.
I could go then to Councillor Crawshaw.
Thanks, Chair, and good evening. Apologies, Janet, I can't remember the name of the transport person that you said you had with you, but
Simon Pratt.
Simon, yeah. I guess this is a question really for him, but you know, notwithstanding the points that Gareth Arnold has made in terms of what we can and can't do as a committee, I think, you know, the concern I have with this application, and you know, broadly speaking, I'm hugely in favour of wanting to see more nursery provision in the city because I know how desperately short it is, but this number of extra journeys that might be generated by the site and you know, the sort of overall impact, and I think perhaps at the back of my mind, slightly ignoring, is it feels like there's a lack of an emphasis on trying to drive sort of sustainable transport. There's not very many cycle hoops. There's nothing that is about trying to sort of encourage people out of the car. I appreciate for a lot of people that's you know, difficult. I just wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about what consideration has been given to the overall transport plan in the, you know, the wider development, and in particular with this development, what steps are being taken to try to not make it wholly car dependent to be able to access the location?
Well, I'll start off and then Simon can come in if there's for his extra knowledge. The university have been massively successful in their green travel policy. So the surveys every single year, and the diversion into bus use, cycle use and pedestrian is there for all to see. And I can send you, well, the council will have copies of the university travel plan. So in terms of the cycle parking, this is a position on both campuses. The university don't want cycles dotted all over the place. So anywhere where it's apparent that there isn't enough cycle parking, they just put more in. This is a private site and the university have control over the whole of it. So if there isn't enough cycle parking, the nursery people will say, and the university will put more cycle parking in. But the other point is on cycle parking numbers, the shifts at this site, so that all the staff who are in the report won't all be working all the time. So on the survey of the existing staff at the existing campus, this was what has been calculated to be appropriate. Simon, I don't know if you want to say any more about the mitigation, the general mitigation from the outline permission.
Well, I think just going, I'm assuming everyone can hear me, but just going back to the cycle parking, what we've got, the annual surveys showed that 25% of people coming to the university use cycles, and what we've done is we've used that guidelines, and you know, with the 38 staff, we should be getting somewhere in the region of 10 cycle parking spaces, and I know there's 12 or 13, I think it is, that's actually provided on site, so it's a little bit over that percentage mark. Certainly with regards to sustainable travel, as Janet said, the travel plan that the university have implemented has been very successful and has worked very well, particularly with the public transport usage. That's had a massive take-up with the students being able to travel to and from campuses without cost, and so that has meant that has been really successful. I think the one thing I would like to touch on, I suppose, and people have been concerned about, is the level of traffic that this would actually generate. I think, you know, Janet touched on it in the first instance in the talk, in the fact that the current nursery is actually well oversubscribed, and the university needs to provide more nursery places for its staff and undergraduates, and this is it really. So the traffic that's coming to this location is actually already coming to the university. What they're doing is interrupting their journey to come here first. So it's interrupting journeys as opposed to generating new.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Croshaw, you just got a supplementary there.
Yeah, it was just a quick supplementary, just on the cycle parking. I couldn't see from the plan, because obviously a lot of parents with young children will tend to use, well, not, you know, some will use trailers, or they'll use the bigger sort of wider bikes. And I just wanted to double check that the cycle provision that was being put there for the people bringing children to the site would be suitably spaced for the bigger bikes that are likely to be being used.
So Cian, do you want to come in on that one?
Hi there, yeah. Yes, they are suitably spaced, and as Janet and Simon have touched on, in terms of cycle provision, we've allowed the sort of guided figure for staff and for both parents to drop off, because thinking about parking and cycle parking, the way that people will use this building is slightly different to how they may use other buildings in the campus. It's very much a drop-off facility for parents for dropping off their kids, and they won't be staying there for most of the day. So cars won't be staying on the site in the same way, and their bikes not necessarily will be staying on the site in the same way. But yes, the cycle hoops and the secure cycling is big enough for trailers too. We also have some indoor storage facilities for car seats and other things that parents might need to drop off.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any further questions. Oh, Councillor Craghill. Sorry.
Just following up on that, then you would presumably be happy if we amended the condition to specify that the cycle parking should be either all of it or a proportion of it big enough to accommodate trailers and cargo bike type things.
Yes.
Sorry, Cian, go on.
Sorry, yes, I would say this has been a discussion point with the university as well, and they've highlighted that because some professors and members at the university use trailers. So we have considered this in the design, and I think that'd be agreeable for everyone involved.
Thank you. I can't see any further questions, so yeah, just thank you all for your time this evening. Obviously, your comments will be taken into account as the committee takes this forward now. Right, thank you. I'll just ask the committee then if there are any further questions for Gareth.
Sure.
Chair, I've just got one more thing to say. Hopefully, only one more thing to say. Councillor Webb brought up the issue of the ecology at the site in paragraph 5.47, and that refers to a condition. I can't actually see that we've included the condition within the schedule of the conditions. So if members were, I might be wrong, I'd have to speed read through 19 conditions, but if members are minded to grant reserve matters consent, I would recommend a further condition in accordance with what's set out in paragraph 5.47.
Thank you, Gareth. That was my reading as well. I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know why it'd been missed out.
Thank you. In terms then as well, the points just made on the cycling provision, I know the condition is about, submitting details of the cycling areas to the council before occupation. I guess that can be taken into account at that point, or does it need?
Yes, so that's condition
14.
14. Yeah, I think a simple change to the wording to cover that issue would cover that issue.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I just noticed that again on page 69, condition 2, we have the trees and plants to replace within a period of 5 years. I think we've moved rather towards replacing landscaping in perpetuity. And I don't know how members would feel about changing that condition to a longer period than that, certainly. I noticed the next one, there's no comment, the next application, there's no comment on how long the landscaping scheme will be expected to survive, but this one there is.
Thank you. That is something we have done, and I'm sure members can pick that up shortly. Councillor Crackhill.
I haven't noted the reference down properly here, but I wanted to ask on the amount of cycle parking. The speaker referred to 12 spaces for staff. Now, I thought the highways officer asked for 25. But I may not get very far with this point because I can't find where it says that.
That is that's correct. It's referenced in the highways, the final paragraph of the highways consultation. So it goes
here we
over
are.
to the other
Yes,
page.
page 53.
Yeah. So it's I think as Janet O'Neill said, the issue here is one of there are cycle parking standards in the local plan which are derived from the size of the building. What the university have said is that what the applicants have said is that from our surveys we know that 25% of our staff come by bike. We have, I think it's 38 members of staff on site, not all of employed, not all of whom are on site at one time, and they've come up with their proposal on the basis of that that sort of evidence from their own studies of the university itself. So that's where the difference comes from, because I think. See, on page 53 it mentions the figures, so that's 25 spaces of staff is the CYC standard, and I think elsewhere in the report it refers to 38 members of staff.
Right, and the 16 visitor spaces is deemed to be enough by officers. I just wondered if those numbers were printed correctly.
16 visitor spaces is
so that's 8 stands providing 16 spaces.
yeah. Sorry, I've got a second screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, yeah, and the cycle stands for the employees are provided within a secure building, separate building.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Webb.
Cheers. The electric vehicle charging points. It says there's 2 that we're asking for in this scheme. Is that basically based on the CYC standards? Essentially, given the number of spaces you're talking about, 2 is what we should be aiming for as a percentage, or proportion, or go higher.
That's from the that would have been in consultation with our environmental health air quality officers, and based on the standards in the council's low emission strategy.
But we could go higher if we wanted.
We could, but we have a policy. You would have to look at the reasonableness and why in this particular case you should require an applicant to exceed the council's stated policy. It's a relatively recent policy as well. It's not one that's necessarily been overtaken by events because it was written a decade ago.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any further questions at this point, so if people are happy now to move into debate. So I'd invite any comments, proposals, etc. Councillor Crawshaw.
Thank you, Chair. I think all planning applications are about a planning balance, aren't they? And I do have some concerns about the impact of the traffic from this site. I'm also a little concerned that the methodology has been disputed by the highways officers, and that hasn't been sufficiently resolved. However, I do take on board the points that have been made about the outline plan, and I also suspect that even if the methodology had been agreed, and even if we were looking at an increase of traffic in the wider area, we would still be concluding that nursery places are desperately needed. And I think I can't get beyond that fact. I think if you then start to add in the fact that this is a passive house standards development, that there are, I don't think, ambitious enough sustainable transport schemes and policies around it, but there is sustainable access, so there is scope to improve that further. So I don't see any reason why we would want to refuse this application beyond the concerns that we've already raised, and so I think I would move that we approve.
Thank you. Assume that's with those 3 changes to the conditions on ecology.
Yeah, with the 3 conditions as have been discussed.
Thank you. Can I just ask then if anybody's willing to second that? Councillor Webb, I saw you first. Do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, I'm in agreement with Councillor Crawshaw there, primarily because of the huge need for nursery places within the city. And obviously, as the developer said, or as the applicant said, they are essentially needing to renovate an old nursery, really. So this is we could probably do with more. I also think that the car parking is a concern, and I know that in that general part of the city around the Badger Hill area and up around there, that there is concerns about traffic, and this, could lead to overflow, and this is a concern, and I think we should keep an eye on that as best we can as a council. However, I am very pleased that in this application, we are not having to argue for BREEAM excellent standard as we have been in the previous few applications. And I am glad that they are trying to be ecologically friendly, and hopefully we can keep pushing for that. So yes, I am in also support, and I second.
Thank you. A couple more speakers then. We've got Councillor Colwick.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to second that. I'm very, I don't have the opportunity of doing so, but I'm happy to support this application. There's a lot to welcome here, and I think we've probably said all that can be said at this point.
Thank you. We'll see, because we've got Councillor Crackhill.
Yes, I'm afraid I can't quite agree with that point of view. I obviously agree that there's a need for more nursery places, which has obviously been known for quite a long time, and the university has known it needs more nursery places for a long time. I would have imagined there are some queries actually from officers about what impact this might have on existing nursery places, which we are bound to protect. But obviously we do need more. Also, the passive house is obviously welcome, and I'm sure that the nursery itself will be a very pleasant environment for the children once most of them have been dropped off there by car and picked up by car. But I do think that, you know, that doesn't make up for the questions around the other questions about sustainability, the fact that it is almost entirely put forward as a car-based development, and beyond that, that it is put forward on a site that wasn't intended to be developed in the original master plan. And I do have concerns about this continually cutting into the master plan. Why do we have a master plan if we just keep cutting into it for this reason or that reason or another? And I'm not convinced that there isn't somewhere else on the site that this could be located, so it doesn't cut into the glacial moraine of Kimberlow Hill, so it doesn't remove the amenity of local residents in that area. It could, for example, be located on the car park as the landscape architect has suggested. And I think it's primarily for that landscape reason above all others, which is very clear in the paper, that I'm not able to support this.
Thank you. I can't see any further speakers at this point, so Gareth, if you're able to give me a quick rundown.
Thank you, Chair. So it's been recommended that, it's been moved that the recommendation to approve planning permission, reserve matters consent, and that's subject to a couple of amendments to the conditions, including the deletion of the reference to 5 years in the landscape condition 2, the amendment to condition 14 to include reference to space provided for cycle trailers, and then an additional condition to reference the ecology references in paragraph 5.47 of the report.
Thank you. Before then we take the vote, could I just check again that everybody's heard the whole debate? Stick a hand up. Thank you. And Chris, yes, if you could.
Thanks, Chair. So we've had a motion to approve proposed by Councillor Crawshaw and seconded by Councillor Webb. Members, please state if you're for, against or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Craghill.
Against.
Councillor Crawshaw.
For.
Councillor Cullick.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Galvin.
For.
Councillor Kilbane.
For.
Councillor Orrell.
For.
Councillor Perrott.
For.
Councillor Warby.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
And the Chair.
For.
Those carried, Chair.
Thank you. So that is approved. Just checking the time. We've only got one more item on the agenda. I think there's only one speaker. So if we could aim to be back for 5 to 7. Turn off our cameras and join the breakout room, please. Welcome back everybody to part 4. Move straight on then to agenda item 4D. Gareth, if you can start us off.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen.
It seems to have worked.
Okay, excellent. Get my laser pointer. So this is a planning application for the demolition of the existing buildings on this site and the erection of 8 units for light industry, general industry or storage distribution uses with ancillary trade counter. So this is an aerial photograph from Google. This is Clifton Moorgate, Kettlestring Lane, Lysander Close. These are the 2 buildings to be demolished. Took some more photographs yesterday of the site. So there's one of the buildings to be demolished. That's Kettlestring Lane on the left-hand side. Lysander Close with the other building to be demolished. And this return road that heads down to the Mercedes-Benz dealership. This is the retained building at the back. It's a site plan, sorry, the existing site plan. Proposed site plan, so there's units 1 to 7, units 8 and 9. Floor plans, so units 1 to 7. The elevations and the elevations for units 8 and 9, which are those small units next to the entranceway. That's all there is. Are any of those images that members would want me to go back to have another look at?
Yeah, and if you could just raise your blue hand if you do have any. I can't see any, so I think we're okay.
I will stop sharing. We do have an update that was circulated to members earlier on today in relation to the trade counter that's referred to in the report, and that recommends an additional condition to limit the trade counter that may be required by any of the operators of those units to no more than 20% of the net floor space of the units. I do have the planning case officer, Kevin O'Connell, here with us as well, who may be able to answer any questions that members have on the application.
Yep, and I'll just invite any questions. See Councillor Crackhill.
Sorry, I went on mute. Yeah, I just have one, well, maybe 2 questions. One, on page 94, the number of car parking spaces provided. Now, I understand why you need a certain number of car parking spaces because of the nature of the development, and people need to carry stuff around in vehicles, and there's the trade counter and whatever. But it still seems quite a high number overall. I wonder if you could just clarify how that number is kind of arrived at.
It's Kevin O'Connell speaking. The number was arrived at by the applicant. Highways officers were content with the number, in bearing in mind the location of it and the uses that you mentioned. Obviously, wanting to make this site as sustainable as possible, but the number of spaces was considered to be quite acceptable for this location. Bear in mind that some parts of the estate can get very congested.
Right. Okay, thank you. My other question, and I meant to ask it on the previous application, but I forgot because it seems to be exactly the same wording. Condition number 8 on page 102. conditions a travel plan, which is good. But then it gives a reason, and it's that reason that it was the same wording in the previous application, actually. Now, I didn't think that described, it talks about transportation, which is a bit American, but I didn't think that was quite describes the reason for a travel plan. I thought a travel plan was to set out how the applicant will do everything they can to encourage modal shift towards sustainable transport and minimum. I mean, obviously it's going to be quite difficult in this one. I really just wanted to draw attention to the wording that generally a travel plan is to reduce the mode of single-use vehicle, the use of single-use motorized, single occupier motorized vehicles. Is that not the case?
That is the case. We
so just
you can,
as a standard point, could that be looked at?
We can. We look at our conditions periodically, especially the ones that tend to crop up, and our standard conditions, and we can review that and make sure it's in line with what we're actually seeking to achieve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oram.
Thank you, Chair. Condition 4. I'm reading through this, and I think this is excellent that we've got them to do BREEAM Excellent, which we've been complaining about for some time. And it says they can't occupy the building until they've got the certificate. And then it puts in brackets as soon as possible after that. So it means that they can occupy the building before we get the certificate. Is it necessary to have that extra bit in? It just seems a loophole to me that may be perfectly all right with this application, but it looks like a loophole for future applicants to get round the actual completion of BREEAM. You see what I mean, Gareth?
I do. I see what you mean. There is a. I'm not sure I can answer the question. Right. There is a. It does seem to relate because reading condition 4, the post-construction stage assessment submitted prior to occupation of the building, but this says in case of a certificate as soon as practical after occupation. I guess I assume there is a difference between at what stage a certificate is prepared as opposed to an assessment is prepared. That's the only, but I'm afraid I can't answer whether that's whether there's an error there. I suggest if it's in our condition, there won't be an error, but I'm not sure I can help you any further.
Right, I'm happy for it to go through this, but for future applications, could we clarify that you don't occupy the building until you've got the certificate?
We can clarify why that wording is used, and if necessary, if things have moved on since that condition was written originally, then we can look at that.
Thanks, Gareth.
Thank you. I can't see any further questions at this point, so I think if we move on then to our public speaker, who's Mrs. Joanna Gabrielazou, who's the representative of the applicant. If you're with us, Mrs. Gabrielazou.
Hello.
Yeah,
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right, okay,
yeah.
good evening.
Okay. Occasions. Yeah, if you want to start in your own time.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Good evening again. We've met before and quite recently. As you know, I'm Joanna Gabrielazou, planning consultant to the Industrial Property Investment Fund, who's the applicant, a fund of Legal and General. And you'll be aware from recent months that there's been quite a bit of investment from the fund in Clifton Moor to ensure that the asset is reaching its full potential. This application seeks to redevelop the site to provide 9 units, which will include B1C to B2 and B8, including a trade counter, The corner unit at Kettlestring Lane and Lysander Close will be for Mast Tyres. They're a local business already present on Clifton Moor who wish to relocate and expand. This is an example of where Legal and General work with their existing tenants to make sure that they can stay and grow on the park. The remaining 8 units, so they're not under offer as yet, so they're speculative developments at this point, but they provide opportunities for new and existing businesses, both locally and nationally. And we estimate in the region of 82 jobs could be created at the site. There is a lack of stock on Clifton Moor, so this provides the opportunity to maximise the land available and create double the existing floor space on this particular site, which is currently quite inefficient. We're also looking at introducing 20 covered cycle spaces and 3 spaces for electric charge points in line with your policy. The proposed landscaping has been designed and reviewed with the project arboriculturist and ecologist and is based on their recommendations. It's been laid out to enhance the site and adjacent streetscape. Only native species are being introduced and include 10 new trees to replace the 9 Category C trees that are to be removed and the 1 group which is Category C. A native species hedge made up of 8 species will be introduced along the length of Lysander Close to the rear of units 1 to 7 and also between units 1 and 8. All beds are to be planted with native shrubs and ground cover and grassed areas to be seeded with wildflower grass mix. We'll be removing the invasive plant Cotoneaster from the site. Okay, we'll be greatly improving the longevity of the site's landscaping and also the site's biodiversity, and that will contribute to BREEAM credits as well. As you've noted, we are looking to deliver on policy CC1 and 2 in regard to carbon emission reduction and BREEAM excellence. Clearly, we welcome your officer's recommendation to approve the application. We believe it meets your local plan and MPPF objectives, delivering sustainable employment development, and we'd welcome your support today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I can see there are a couple of questions already. So, Councillor Crawshaw, do you want to kick off?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that, Ms. Gabriatsu. And I think you and I will probably both be as pleased as each other that we don't have to go round and round discussing BREEAM very good. So it's great to see that you're BREEAM excellent on this application. I just wanted to pick up, you did mention something about the landscaping and the planting. In our report, paragraph 3.3, it says that the proposed development would result in the loss of several trees that are suitable for retention, and that the significant increase of the footprint of the development prevents the provision of adequate replacement trees and planting. And I appreciate some of what you said, but obviously we are not in a position within this application to condition, according to officers, for adequate replacement of the trees and planting. But as you noted, the fund that you're representing owns a number of sites within the Clifton Moor area. And so I wondered, as a gesture of goodwill, really, whether or not you could seek to replace the trees that are being lost from this site amongst some of the other sites that you have on the Clifton Moor area, just to sort of, counter the extended footprint of this site on this application proposal.
Well, whilst it's possibly not necessarily a planning matter for the application, what I can say is that the fund's actually already done that. So they've already got a programme where last year they introduced 21 trees, including, I think, 21 fruit trees. They've introduced a wildflower insect area which covers 200 square metres very close to this part of the site. There's a further 10 new trees that were planted this year as well within the site, and these are just on plots that are sat which aren't going to be developed. So they have actually already been doing that across the site, so hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that's great, and the more that you can encourage them to plant more and green things up as much as we possibly can, the better. But thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, and thank you, Joanna. And this is not so much a question as just a thank you for listening to us over the previous few meetings about BREEAM Excellent. And it is good to see that you could do it, and long may it continue. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any further questions, so yeah, just thank you for your time this afternoon, Mrs. Cabrera-Sue, and obviously all the comments that you've made will be taken into account as we consider the application.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, to the committee then, if there are any further questions for officers. Councillor Kilbane, you first.
Sorry, no, it wasn't a question. I was going to move approval. Sorry, I was jumping the gun.
Right, let me just see if there are any questions, and then I'll come back if necessary. Yeah, no, I can't see any questions, so go ahead.
Oh, in that case, it might be a tricky one, this. I'm going to move approval of this and echo what Councillor Webb and Crawshaw have said, in that it is a refreshing change to see an industrial unit brought before us that is achieving BREEAM Excellent. And on those grounds, I'm going to move that we approve this application.
Thank you. Sorry. Just if anybody's willing to second that. I think Councillor Webb's, well, yeah, half the committee. So I think Councillor Webb was first.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been banging on about it for a while, and may this be a sign to developers of similar units that this is what is needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any further questions or points at this point. So Gareth, are you happy to?
Thank you, Chair. So it's been moved that approval be granted subject to the conditions in the report and the additional condition that was outlined in the update.
It's just to check then the members heard all the debate. Stick your hands up. Thank you. And Chris, if you're there, could you conduct the vote?
Thanks, Chair. So members, we've had a motion to approve proposed by Councillor Kilbane and seconded by Councillor Webb. Please state if you're for, against or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Craghill.
For.
Councillor Crawshaw.
For.
Councillor Cullick.
For. I share the positive comments of other members.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Galvin.
For.
Councillor Kilbane.
For.
Councillor Orrell.
For.
Councillor Perrott.
For.
Councillor Wardby. Councillor Wardby.
Sorry, I did say for. Sorry, I didn't realise you hadn't heard me. For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
And the Chair.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So that is approved. So it just remains to thank everybody for your time this evening, and also to all the officers in the background as well, making this all run nice and smoothly. So thank you all and good night.